Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The sound of a folder slamming onto the mahogany desk startled the air in the quiet office. Richard Davenport, his imposing figure radiating authority, seemed to fill the room as he loomed over the humble stack of papers. Kane Mitchell's heart plummeted to the pit of his stomach as he recognized the contents within. His secret life, so carefully guarded, was exposed. Forgotten personal items, a lipstick and stocking, had inadvertently created a trail that led back to him.
I can provide context, sir,"
Kane stammered, his voice cracking under the weight of his embarrassment. But Davenport, unmoved, silenced him with a swift gesture.
"I didn't ask for your personal affairs,"
he said, his tone leaving no room for argument.
"What I need is for this company to maintain its professional standards."
He sighed, sitting on the edge of the desk.
"Look, Mitchell, your work has been exemplary. Your analysis reports are always spot on. But this..."
He tapped the folder.
"This raises questions about judgment."
Kane's fingers tightened around the armrests of his chair. At 32, he'd spent over a decade building his reputation at Grayson Financial. His short-cropped blonde hair and pressed charcoal suits had become his armor in the corporate battlefield. Few knew of the other side of him, the side that sometimes, behind locked doors, slipped into silky fabrics and painted lips with shades of pink and red.
"I understand, sir. It won't happen again."
Richard's expression softened slightly. "I'm not firing you, Kane, but HR has recommended you attend a workshop. Corporate sensitivity training." Kane blinked. "Sensitivity training? But I haven't." "It's not negotiable. The company is committed to inclusivity, and we need to ensure all employees understand proper workplace boundaries." Richard slid a brochure across the desk. 3 days, starting tomorrow. The company will cover all expenses. The brochure bore the blandly inoffensive title, Understanding Diversity in the Workplace. Kane skimmed the text, noting the location, a retreat center 2 hours outside the city. 3 days seems excessive for... "Consider it paid leave with a purpose," Richard interrupted. "Your desk will be waiting when you return. That is, if you want to return." The implications hung heavy in the air. Attend, or clean out your desk.
"I'll be there,"
Kane said quietly.
"Good man."
Richard stood, signaling the end of the conversation. "Oh, and Mitchell? Pack light. Everything you need will be provided." The retreat center looked more like a small luxury hotel than a corporate training facility. Nestled among rolling hills and surrounded by mature oak trees, its stone facade and wide windows spoke of comfort rather than corporate sterility. Kane parked his sedan in the lot, grabbed his overnight bag, and headed for the entrance. A petite woman with a sleek copper bob greeted him at the reception desk. Her name tag read, Morgan, Facilitator. "Mr. Mitchell, welcome." She checked something off on her tablet. "You're the last to arrive. The orientation is about to begin in the blue room." She handed him a key card. "Room 212 will be yours for the duration of your stay." The blue room turned out to be a spacious conference area with comfortable chairs arranged in a circle. 5 other people already occupied seats. 4 men who, like Kane, wore expressions ranging from discomfort to resignation, and 1 woman whose professional attire and tablet marked her as another facilitator. Morgan entered behind Kane and took her place beside the other woman. "Welcome, everyone. I'm Morgan Ellis, and this is my colleague Vivian Chen. We'll be guiding you through this 3-day workshop." Her smile was warm but professional. Let's start with introductions, shall we? The men took turns introducing themselves, all professionals from various companies, all seemingly as confused about their presence as Kane felt. When his turn came, he kept it brief.
Kane Mitchell, financial analyst at Grayson.
Morgan nodded, then moved to a table at the side of the room and picked up a stack of folders.
Now that we know who you are, let's discuss why you're here.
She distributed the folders. This isn't a standard corporate sensitivity workshop. This is a specialized program developed for individuals who have demonstrated interest in gender expression outside traditional masculine norms. Kane's blood ran cold as he opened his folder. Inside lay photographs. Himself, entering his apartment building with a shopping bag from which peeked the lace of a woman's blouse. Another showing him through his apartment window, applying makeup at his vanity. The stockings and lipstick from work formed just one piece of a surveillance puzzle.
What the hell is this?
One of the other men, Todd from marketing at some tech firm, was on his feet, his face flushed with anger.
This is an invasion of privacy.
Vivian raised a calming hand.
Please understand, these materials were gathered legally through public observation only. Your employers have concerns about your ability to maintain professional boundaries. Rather than termination, they've offered you this opportunity. Opportunity for what, exactly?
Kane found his voice, though it sounded distant to his own ears. Morgan's smile widened.
For the next 3 days, gentlemen, you will live as women.
The silence that followed felt thick enough to cut with a knife.
This is ridiculous,
another participant muttered.
Is it?
Morgan countered.
Each of you has already demonstrated interest in feminine expression. We're simply providing a safe, structured environment to explore that interest fully, while addressing the boundary issues that brought you here. And if we refuse?
Todd asked.
Then you're free to leave,
Vivian said simply.
Though I should mention that completion certificates will only be issued to those who participate fully. Your continued employment may depend on that certificate.
Kane's thoughts raced. He could walk away, find another job, but financial analyst positions were competitive, and explanations would be required. His reputation would be shattered either way.
The choice is yours,
Morgan continued.
But consider this. 3 days to explore something you've clearly been curious about, in a supportive environment, with professional guidance. When will you get another opportunity like this?
Kane looked around the room. The other men's expressions had shifted from outrage to contemplation. One by one, they settled back into their seats.
Excellent,
Morgan said.
Then let's begin. Please follow me to the Transformation Suite.
The Transformation Suite occupied the entire east wing of the retreat's second floor. It had been divided into stations: clothing, makeup, hair, movement training, each staffed by professionals who looked entirely unfazed by the strange procession of uncomfortable businessmen. Each of you will be assigned a female identity for the duration of your stay, Vivian explained, consulting her tablet. This identity includes a name, background, and style profile. Your garments have been selected based on body measurements provided by your employer's health insurance records. Kane was directed to a private changing room where a garment rack held several outfits. A laminated card on the door read, Stephanie Morrison, Administrative Professional, Classic Feminine Style. A stylist named Paolo entered after a brief knock.
Let's start with the basics, yes?
His accent carried hints of Italy, his manner professional, but warm.
First, we remove the male attire.
The next hour passed in a blur of unfamiliar sensations. The cool slip of silk against freshly shaved legs, the gentle constriction of a padded bra over his chest, the tug of shapewear smoothing his waistline into a more feminine silhouette.
"Blue is definitely your color,"
Paolo commented, helping Kane into a knee-length sundress with a delicate floral pattern.
"With your blonde hair and complexion, you'll want to stick with cool tones."
He added a cream-colored cardigan.
"Perfect for early autumn, no?"
When Paolo finally turned Kane toward the full-length mirror, the reflection seemed to belong to someone else entirely. The dress hugged his artificially created curves, falling in soft pleats from his waist. The cardigan softened his shoulders, but it was his face that captured his attention. Paolo had applied makeup with a skilled hand, subtly reshaping his features without making him look artificial.
"Stephanie,"
Paolo said with a satisfied nod.
"She is born."
Kane stared at his reflection, unable to find words. The person looking back at him wasn't just Kane in women's clothing. There was something authentic in the image, something that resonated in a way he hadn't expected.
"The shoes will be challenging at first,"
Paolo continued, presenting a pair of modest beige pumps with 2-inch heels.
"But by the end of day 3, you'll navigate them like you were born to it."
The heels changed everything. His posture, his center of gravity, the way he had to think about each step. Paolo guided him through the basics of feminine movement, from sitting to walking to the subtle art of gesturing without the broad movements typical of masculine body language. Small steps, roll from heel to toe, let your hips move naturally, the shoes will guide you. By the time Kane emerged from the changing room, the other participants had completed their transformations as well. Each had been styled distinctly, one as a corporate executive in a tailored skirt suit, another as a bohemian artist type, the others in variations of feminine presentation that suited their body types and assigned personas. Morgan, now addressing them exclusively by their female names, gathered the group in a small lounge area.
"Ladies, you've completed the first phase of your transformation. For the remainder of today, you'll practice basic feminine skills, movement, voice modulation, social interactions. Tomorrow, we'll venture into more complex territory, emotional expression, conflict resolution, and a supervised excursion to put your skills into practice." She smiled at each of them in turn. "Remember, you're in a safe space. Mistakes are expected and will be corrected gently. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness and authenticity."
Kane, no, Stephanie now, felt a curious sense of relief wash over her. For 3 days, she didn't have to hide. For 3 days, she could explore this side of herself without judgment. The surveillance that had brought her here still troubled her, but the opportunity itself? That felt unexpectedly like freedom. By dinner time on the first day, Stephanie had mastered the basics of walking in her modest heels, and had begun to find a voice that, while not convincingly female to critical ears, at least avoided the deeper registers of Kane's normal speech. The group dined together in a private room, practicing feminine dining etiquette under Vivian's watchful eye.
"Smaller bites, Stephanie. A lady savors her food."
The conversation flowed more easily than expected. Shared vulnerability had created an unusual bond among the participants. They discussed their backgrounds, their careers, and gradually, tentatively, the experiences that had led them to this unusual workshop.
"I've been dressing in private for years," admitted Amanda, who had been Todd in another life.
"My wife found out last year. She's been supportive, but keeping it completely separated from work has been challenging."
"I never meant for it to become a thing," contributed Elizabeth, formerly Eric from accounting.
It started with Halloween, a dare from college friends, but something clicked, you know? It felt right in a way I couldn't explain. Stephanie nodded, recognizing her own journey in these stories. I always told myself it was just stress relief, she said softly. A way to escape the pressures of being Kane for a while. But lately I've been wondering if it's more than that. Morgan, who had been quietly observing, smiled approvingly.
That's what this workshop is really about, ladies. Not just teaching you to maintain boundaries between personal and professional lives, but helping you understand yourselves more fully. Whatever conclusions you reach about your gender expression, they should be informed ones. After dinner came an evening session on makeup application, removing what the professionals had done and learning to recreate simpler versions themselves. Stephanie discovered she had a steady hand for eyeliner, earning praise from the makeup artist.
You've done this before,
the artist observed. A few times, Stephanie admitted, but never with proper instruction. By the time she returned to room 212, exhaustion had settled into her bones. She carefully removed her makeup, following the steps they'd been taught, hung the blue sundress and cream cardigan in the closet, and slipped into the silky nightgown provided. As sleep claimed her, a thought drifted through her mind. In all her years of secret dressing, she'd never spent an entire day as a woman, never eaten a meal, never had conversations, never simply existed in feminine form for hours on end. The experience felt surreal, but also strangely natural, as if she'd finally allowed herself to breathe using both lungs instead of just one. Morning brought new challenges. Stephanie awoke to find a schedule slipped under her door, outlining the day ahead. Breakfast at 8 o'clock, advanced movement training at 9:30, emotional intelligence workshop at 11 o'clock, lunch at 1 o'clock, followed by supervised excursion preparation, and then the excursion itself from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Dinner would be at 7 o'clock, with an evening session on authentic self-expression to follow. A new outfit waited in the closet, a casual but feminine ensemble of slim-fitting navy slacks, a pale blue blouse with ruffled short sleeves, and the same beige pumps from yesterday. The note attached simply read, Stephanie, Day 2, Casual Professional. Breakfast proved easier than dinner had been. The movements were becoming more natural, less consciously performed. Stephanie found herself laughing at something Elizabeth said, and the laugh that emerged wasn't the deep chuckle of Cain, but something lighter, more melodic. Well done, Vivian murmured as she passed behind Stephanie's chair. That sounded completely natural. The advanced movement training pushed them further. How to cross legs while seated, how to bend and retrieve a dropped item gracefully, the subtle art of using body language to navigate social spaces as a woman. By the end of the session, Stephanie's feet ached from the heels, but she moved with growing confidence. The emotional intelligence workshop proved unexpectedly challenging, led by a psychologist named Dr. Francis Werner. It required them to express feelings that men were typically conditioned to suppress. In your female personas, Dr. Werner explained, you have permission to access emotional ranges that might feel forbidden in male presentation. This isn't about stereotypes, women aren't inherently more emotional than men, but about the social permission to express emotions openly. They practiced describing emotional states, recognizing subtle emotional cues in others, and responding with appropriate empathy. For Stephanie, it felt like exercising atrophied muscles. I've spent so long analyzing numbers, she admitted during a paired exercise with Olivia, formerly Owen. Emotions were irrelevant data points, noise in the system. And now? Dr. Werner prompted from across the room. Stephanie considered. Now they feel like valuable information, like I've been working with incomplete data sets all along. The doctor smiled. Excellent insight, Stephanie. Lunch was followed by preparation for what the facilitators called the practical application phase. their supervised excursion into the nearby town. They received detailed briefings on potential scenarios, safety protocols, and how to handle any challenges that might arise.
"You won't be alone," Morgan assured them. "Our team will be present, though not obviously so. This is a friendly community, and the local businesses are accustomed to our workshop participants. Still, this will be your first experience navigating the world as women outside these walls."
Stephanie felt anxiety flutter in her stomach. It was one thing to be Stephanie here, in this controlled environment. It was another entirely to step into the wider world, to be seen and potentially judged by strangers. They traveled to town in a small shuttle, the mood tense but excited. Their assignment was simple. Each had a short list of tasks to complete, purchases to make in specific shops, a coffee to order at the local cafe, basic social interactions to navigate successfully. Stepping off the shuttle onto the brick-paved main street of the small town, Stephanie took a deep breath. The autumn air carried hints of wood smoke and fallen leaves. She clutched her small purse, checking once more that her list of tasks was inside.
2 hours, ladies, Vivian reminded them. "We'll meet back here at 5:30. Remember your training and remember that you belong in any space you enter."
The group dispersed, each woman heading in a different direction. Stephanie consulted her list. First task, purchase a greeting card from the stationery store 3 blocks east. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the sidewalk as she walked, conscious of maintaining the posture and gait she'd been taught. The first few minutes felt excruciating, certain that every passerby was staring, judging, seeing through her presentation to the man beneath. But gradually, she realized something extraordinary. No one was paying her any particular attention. She was just another woman running errands on a pleasant afternoon. The stationery store was staffed by an older woman with steel gray hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. She glanced up as Stephanie entered, offered a polite, "Good afternoon," and returned to organizing a display of fountain pens. Stephanie browsed the greeting cards, finally selecting one with a watercolor landscape and a simple message of gratitude. At the register, she managed the transaction without incident, even exchanging pleasantries about the weather. "Would you like a receipt, dear?" the shopkeeper asked. "Yes, please," Stephanie replied, her practiced feminine voice emerging naturally now. Outside again, she checked her next task: order a cappuccino at the Cornerstone Cafe. The success of the first interaction had bolstered her confidence, and she found herself actually enjoying the experience as she made her way to the cafe. The coffee shop was busy but not crowded. She joined the short line, studying the menu board while surreptitiously observing how the other women in line stood, checked their phones, adjusted their hair. Each tiny observation became data, patterns to incorporate into her own presentation. "What can I get for you?" the barista asked when her turn came. "A small cappuccino, please," Stephanie ordered, handling the payment smoothly. She waited for her drink at the end of the counter, then found a small table by the window. Sipping her coffee, watching the pedestrian traffic outside, she experienced a moment of profound peace. There was nothing extraordinary happening, just a woman enjoying a quiet moment with her thoughts. Yet, it felt revolutionary. The final task on her list was the most challenging: visit a boutique and try on at least one item of clothing. The prospect of changing rooms and potential questions sent a fresh wave of anxiety through her. Still, she'd come this far. Jasmine's boutique was exactly the sort of upscale women's clothing store that would have made Kane uncomfortable even to walk past. As Stephanie, however, she pushed open the door with determined confidence, greeting the stylish young woman who approached with a professional smile. "Just browsing for now."
Stephanie said. "But I might need some help finding my size." "Of course," the saleswoman replied. "I'm Diana. Just let me know if you need anything." Stephanie moved through the racks, fingering the materials, checking price tags, gradually making her way toward a display of sweaters. A pale green cashmere cardigan caught her eye, similar to the cream one she'd worn yesterday, but in a color that made her think of spring. "That would look lovely with your coloring," Diana commented, approaching. "Would you like to try it on?" The moment of truth. Stephanie nodded. "Yes, I think I would." The changing room was small but elegant, with flattering lighting and a three-way mirror. Stephanie removed her blouse and slipped the cardigan on over her bra. The softness of the cashmere against her skin was exquisite, the color bringing out subtle highlights in her blonde hair that she'd never noticed before. She emerged to get Diana's opinion, finding unexpected pleasure in the simple female ritual of seeking fashion feedback. "Oh, that's definitely your color," Diana enthused. "Perfect for your skin tone, and it brings out your eyes." Stephanie smiled, genuinely pleased. "I'll take it." By the time she rejoined the group at the meeting point, carrying her boutique purchase in an elegant shopping bag, Stephanie felt transformed in ways that went beyond clothing and makeup. She had navigated the world as a woman and found it not just survivable, but in many ways more comfortable than moving through it as Kane. The evening's authentic self-expression workshop became an animated discussion of their experiences in town. Each woman had stories to share, moments of anxiety, unexpected triumphs, revelations about how differently the world responded to them in female presentation. "I held the door for a mother with a stroller," Olivia recounted, "and she thanked me with this genuine smile. When I'm Owen, that same action often gets a guarded response, like my basic courtesy is somehow suspicious. A man asked if I needed help reaching something on a high shelf," Elizabeth added. "My first reaction was offense. I'm 6 feet tall. But then I realized it wasn't about capability, but about connection. He was looking for a social opening." Stephanie shared her experience at the boutique, how the simple act of trying on a sweater had felt both ordinary and extraordinary. "Tomorrow is our final day," Morgan reminded them as the session concluded. "You'll each have individual consultations with our team to discuss what you've learned and how you wish to proceed afterward. Some of you may choose to completely separate these experiences from your professional lives going forward. Others might find ways to integrate aspects of what you've discovered into your daily existence. There are no wrong answers, only authentic ones." Returning to her room, Stephanie carefully hung up the green cashmere cardigan she'd purchased. It represented something significant, the first piece of women's clothing she had selected and bought openly, as herself, not hidden in a late-night online order or quickly grabbed from a department store with a manufactured excuse ready. As she went through her evening routine, removing makeup, moisturizing, slipping into nightwear, she realized how natural these rituals had become in just 2 days. The thought of returning to Kane's life, to rigid suits and suppressed expressions, suddenly felt constricting in ways she'd never fully acknowledged before. Sleep came with dreams of possibilities she'd never allowed herself to consider. The final day began with individual styling sessions. For Stephanie, this meant working with Paolo to develop a personalized approach to makeup, hair, and clothing that would work in various settings. "Your features are strong but not overly masculine," Paolo observed as he demonstrated a foundation technique. "With proper makeup application, you can achieve a very natural, feminine appearance without extensive procedures." They discussed clothing cuts that would flatter her figure, colors that complemented her complexion, and how to build a versatile wardrobe that could transition between casual and professional settings.
The blue sundress was a good starting point,
Paolo said. But you have many options. With your height and build, you can carry off structured pieces very elegantly. Her consultation with Dr. Werner followed, a deep and searching conversation about identity, authenticity, and future paths. What has surprised you most about these 3 days, Stephanie? The psychologist asked. She considered the question carefully.
How right it feels. I expected to be constantly aware of performing femininity, of it being work, but there are moments when it just flows, when I forget I'm supposed to be acting a part.
Dr. Werner nodded.
And what does that tell you?
That maybe this isn't just play acting. That maybe Stephanie isn't a costume Kane puts on, but another side of who I am. Perhaps even the more authentic side.
They discussed practical considerations, legal options for gender expression, resources for transgender individuals, the spectrum of possibilities from occasional cross-dressing to full transition. Only you can determine your path forward, Dr. Werner emphasized. But whatever you choose, it should come from a place of self-knowledge rather than fear. The afternoon brought their final group session, where Morgan and Vivian presented each participant with their completion certificates and a personalized resource packet. Ladies, you've accomplished something remarkable, Morgan told them. You've had the courage to explore aspects of yourselves that society often encourages people to suppress. Whatever decisions you make about your gender expression going forward, that courage will serve you well. They shared a formal dinner that evening, each woman dressed in her finest outfit. For Stephanie, this meant a knee-length navy cocktail dress with subtle beading at the neckline, paired with silver heels slightly higher than she'd worn previously. Her blonde hair had been styled in soft waves that framed her face, and her makeup was elegant without being overdone. The conversation flowed easily, touching on their experiences and their plans for the future. Some had decided this would remain a private aspect of their lives, separate from their professional personas. Others were considering more significant changes. My wife and I have been discussing this for months, Amanda revealed. This workshop was actually her suggestion. I'm going to explore part-time living as Amanda, starting with weekends and eventually some work-from-home days. When attention turned to Stephanie, she took a deep breath. The answer that had been forming in her mind throughout the day still frightened her, but also felt undeniably right. I don't think I can go back to being Kane full-time, she said quietly. These 3 days have shown me what I've been missing, what I've been denying myself. I'm not sure exactly what path I'll take, but I know it involves more of Stephanie and less of Kane. The supportive responses from the others brought unexpected tears to her eyes, tears she no longer felt compelled to hide. After dinner, Stephanie returned to her room and opened her laptop. The email to Richard Davenport took nearly an hour to compose, each word carefully chosen. Richard, I will be returning from the workshop with the required completion certificate, but not as the person you expected. The past 3 days have proven transformative in ways neither of us anticipated. I am tendering my resignation from Grayson Financial, effective immediately. My expertise in financial analysis remains unchanged, but my understanding of myself has evolved dramatically. I now recognize that continuing in my current role would require suppressing an essential aspect of my identity. The person you knew as Kane Mitchell is transitioning to life as Stephanie. While Grayson's inclusivity policies are commendable on paper, I believe we both recognize that the practical realities of the financial sector would make this transition unnecessarily challenging for all involved if I remained. I am grateful for the opportunities Grayson has provided over the years, and especially for this workshop,
which, despite its unorthodox origins, has provided clarity I've been seeking for decades. My resignation should not reflect poorly on the company. I will be happy to provide a standard 2 weeks of remote transition work to ensure my projects are properly handed off. Please have HR contact me regarding final arrangements. With appreciation. Stephanie Mitchell. Her finger hovered over the send button for several long moments. This wasn't just resigning from a job, it was committing to a fundamental change in her life's direction. Finally, she clicked, feeling a curious mixture of terror and liberation as the message disappeared into the digital ether. She spent the remainder of the evening making lists, researching resources from the materials Dr. Werner had provided, and beginning to sketch out the practical steps her decision would require. New wardrobe, legal consultations, potential career redirections that might be more accepting of her authentic self. The green cashmere cardigan lay across the foot of her bed, a talisman of sorts, representing her first step into a public identity as Stephanie. Tomorrow, she would wear it for the journey home, paired with the navy slacks and a simple white blouse Paolo had suggested. Home would look different now. The apartment that had been Kane's sanctuary and Stephanie's occasional playground would become a space for transformation, for becoming fully the person she had only allowed herself to be in fragments before. As she packed her few belongings, carefully folding the blue floral sundress that had begun her journey, Stephanie felt an unfamiliar emotion settle over her. Hope, unmarred by the shame that had always shadowed her private explorations of femininity. The workshop had begun as corporate punishment, an attempt to embarrass her back into conformity. Instead, it had given her the greatest gift possible, permission to recognize and embrace her authentic self. Tomorrow would bring challenges, practical, social, financial. But for tonight, Stephanie allowed herself to simply exist in the certainty that had emerged from these 3 remarkable days. The woman in the mirror was no longer a disguise or an escape. She was simply herself, stepping fully into the light for the first time.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!